Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Right now, I want to start out on a subject that is one of the greatest virtues that a person can have. There's many great virtues. I mean, there's faith, hope, and charity. There's what can you do without faith? There's confidence in God. There's benevolence, generosity. There's so many good things. Patience, so many wonderful, wonderful virtues, wonderful things. But one of the greatest, without any doubt, I know, I'm not going to say it's the greatest, but in relation to other people, it might be either one of the or the greatest. And I learned this through many ways, especially when I saw the reaction that I got from preaching on the street for 2.5 months every day on the street with a megaphone. Guess what it is? And this is going to make some people cringe. The greatest is forgiveness. Forgiveness. Forgive your enemies. And I'm going to give you a suggestion, a formula about forgiving your enemies. Who do you need to forgive? You need to forgive those who have hurt you. Why do you need to forgive them? To help them? To do a good deed to them? No, that's not the main reason. The main reason is to save yourself. If you harbor unforgiveness, you will not be forgiven very easily. I mean, it says in the Bible, forgive and you will be forgiven. If you don't forgive, you won't be forgiven. You have to forgive. You have no choice. If you want to be forgiven, you want to be in heaven, you've got to forgive. You've got to forgive. Now, of course, if you forgive only partially, you'll pay for it in purgatory. There is a purgatory, thank God there is. Because if there was no purgatory, you either go to heaven or hell, more people would go to hell. I'll give an example of where I so clearly saw the need for forgiveness. I was watching a crime show. Forensic Files was one of my favorite crime shows, and I've seen hundreds of them. I saw a show where this, I think was Japanese lady, had a beautiful Japanese daughter, beautiful. And she had just moved in, young, beautiful, like 23 years old. She had just moved into her new apartment, and a couple of guys helped her to move in with moving furniture. One was a black man who was a neighbor. A neighbor. And after she moved in, that neighbor, I don't know why he went to her house, but now they were, be careful who you're friends with, because now he was, you might say, friends with her. He had done her a favor by helping her move her belongings into her house. He came to her apartment. She let him in. See, once somebody does you a favor, it's kind of hard to close the door to them, isn't it? They were nice to you when they were doing you the favor, like moving your furniture. They were polite, they were nice, you were friendly. It was not a bad experience, but a helpful experience. So now they come to the door. You can't say, you can't come in. I don't know you. You know him. So she let him in. He tried to have sex with her. She resisted, and he took a knife and he stabbed her like 30 times. She was murdered, lying there in her blood. And I saw the mother being interviewed, the mother of the girl being interviewed, and she said, I will never forgive him. I will never forgive him. She said it a few times. And I thought to myself, if you don't forgive him, you will never have peace. See, you don't forgive for the person you're forgiving. In reality, you think it's for them. You're giving them something. No, you're giving yourself something. Now, when you forgive, you have to do it periodically because you harbor unforgiveness inside of you that you don't even realize that you have. And so it's kind of like cobwebs, dust, and dirt in the house that you don't notice it, you don't see it, but you have to make a periodic take a look to make sure it's gone. These things are gone. If you don't look, they'll just sit there. The dirt will sit there, the dust will sit there, the cobwebs will sit there with dust on them. You have to look into your mind and heart regularly, which I do. Look in your mind and heart, say once a month. Now, if you go to confession, if you're lucky enough to have access to confession, you can get cleansed that way. You know, you can tell the priest your sins of unforgiveness, that all your enemies that you can't forgive, you can tell the priest, and you want to forgive him. Tell the priest, I want to forgive him. And the priest will give you a penance and absolve you. So that would be cleansing of the soul. But I haven't been to confession in many, many, many years, but I confess to God directly. A lot. A lot. So what I do periodically is I say, God, I forgive everyone that ever hurt me from the moment I was conceived until this very moment. But that's not enough. Sometimes you need to conjure up and remember. When you conjure and remember who hurt you, you'll have to remember those who hurt you the most. In my cases, think of the people who have robbed me. There's been many. Robbed me of money or, well, things that people took from me didn't bother me. It was when they conned me out of money or just out and out robbed it out of my ATM. So I need to forgive those persons. It was men, one in particular. Then there was another one who really, really hurt me and caused me to lose almost $20,000 by suing me. A negligent lawsuit, frivolous, negligent, and it was dismissed and I was found not guilty. Whatever, I knew it was frivolous, we knew, but it cost me $300 an hour to defend it. And this guy did not spend a penny. They get lawyers for free because the lawyer is going to get a cut of the winnings. So you can in rare cases, I've never been able to get a lawyer to represent me for free, but this guy had a girlfriend who was studying to be a lawyer. And so she must have done it. She conned a guy on the internet. The guy that sued me never even met the lawyer, and probably neither did she, the girlfriend. So they took me, put a lawsuit on me, and I had to defend myself. It dragged out for a year and a half at $300 an hour. It came to almost $20,000. I need to forgive. If I don't forgive this guy for making me lose all that money, I'll be miserable. Miserable. I'll be dirty. Dirty with unforgiveness. My soul will be dirty, and if I die that instant, I have to go to purgatory and get cleansed. So I had to forgive him for myself. Then other things are family. Everybody has family trouble. Sometimes families hurt you, they abuse you, they ignore you, they reject you, they are unfair to you. Let's say some people have an unfair inheritance. Their brother or sister gets all the money. I know a guy who conned his mother into, she was wealthy. He had a sister, and he told me about it. He didn't tell me he conned her, but he told me he persuaded his mother to leave her money to him and not to this, none of it to the sister, so that he can start some sort of a foundation to help children. Foundation to help children. And the money, the mother listened to him, and she left him, I don't know what, but it was enough to live on for maybe the rest of his life. So it must have been millions. But the sister got nothing. Now imagine what the sister feels. Now, did he start a foundation for children? No, he set up some kind of a fund so that he could have access to some access to young men. Not a pedophiliac, but some, young men, college age men. Set up some sort of something for that. So it was a con job, and he got all that money. Now, it has nothing to do with me, but the sister. Imagine how resentful she could have been. So a lot of inheritance problems cause terrific resentment when the other member of the family gets some honor. I just saw one of the Gordon Ramsay episodes, and there was a situation where the parents named the restaurant they were all running. It was the parents, the mom, two brothers, and a sister. And they named the restaurant after the oldest brother. But the younger brother, I could see it. Nobody said a word about it. But I could see the younger brother hated his older brother out of jealousy and resentment. And I know that the younger brother was miserable for hating him. See, you hate the people that hurt you. Hate inside you is like a wound that festers, or a wound that hurts. And you don't realize it hurts, but it hurts. I don't mean it hurts you, your ego. I mean it hurts your soul, is what I mean. Forgiveness is one of the hardest virtues to practice. And it is extremely important that you practice it, that you put it into effect. So you have to do it periodically. And you can't just say, make a blanket, I forgive everyone, because you've got to take a look. You've got to take a look at your woundedness, your hurt, your pain, your wounds that they put on you, your wounds that they gave you. And you've got to remove the worst wound than that is the wound of hatred. You've got to remove your hatred. My first husband hated me. He never loved me. He was not a man of love. He never loved me. But he used me. He married me to use me. He knew he had cancer. And I was a poor girl in California. I had left home. I'm not going to say I ran away from home. I was living with my dad, but I took off without his consent. I knew I had a destiny that was bigger than where I was in Brooklyn. I knew I had an opportunity to go to Hollywood, and I took it. But the man who took me there threw me out on the street because I wouldn't have sex with him. A photographer of Marilyn Monroe. He threw me out on the street in Venice, California with no money but $60 in my pocket, which he had owed me and paid me for modeling. Now, that's not even the subject of my forgiveness that I'm talking about. The subject is, a few days later, I met Stanley Everts, my first husband, on the beach, on Muscle Beach. I walked 20 beaches from Venice to Santa Monica and met him on Muscle Beach. He was playing volleyball. He was handsome. Handsome on the outside, but ugly on the inside. He never loved me, but I was 16 years old. He was like 33 or something, or 34 maybe, which is similar to my parents. It's funny how we repeat the patterns of my parents. When my parents got together, my mom was 16 and my dad was like 30, same age, either 32 or 34, I don't remember. Something very similar, very, very similar. The point I want to make is I was never in love with him. I knew he was using me, but I had no shelter. I wanted him to give me a loan so I could become a server and I could have supported myself, but he refused. I just needed $500. I said, give me a loan so that I can become a server. Those days we called it waitress. And I loved the job of a waitress. I loved it. And I could have supported myself. Not in luxury, but just bare necessities. And he could have, if he cared about me, he could have helped me a little, like subsidizing me because he was a teacher. So a couple of years went by, and I'm going to try to cut to the chase here. I don't want to prolong this anecdote. I was going to leave him, and I was going to move to Mexico, and I was studying Spanish. So I was right there in the apartment. He saw me that I was studying Spanish, so he knew what my plans were because I had already been to Mexico and I wanted to go back there and live there. He tried to kill me. He tried to strangle me 2 different times. And the second time we had a baby. I grabbed the baby and ran out. And that's how I became a professional model, a professional pin-up nude model. I had what it takes. But he hated me. His hate was so great. He found me where I was. He called every motel and hotel in Hollywood and he found me. And I was under my real name. I should have used a fake name. But I didn't think he'd go to that level to find me, to call every single motel and hotel in that area. But he did. And he told me that he had a recurrence of cancer and he needed me to come back and take care of him. And I did. I did. And he had only 6 months to live, and he did live only 6 months and he died. And when I had a baby and I went to check our life insurance, he had canceled it. So of course I was devastated. I was penniless. I had $5 to my name after I buried him. $5. That's how I became a dancer. And this is not even about me forgiving him. This is not about me. It was about him. He died, and he appeared to me on a throne of flames. And he demanded, he didn't ask in a nice way, he demanded, help me, help me. He was sitting on a throne like Lincoln's memorial with armrests, and he was burning in flames. And he said, help me, you've helped so many people, help me. He demanded. I began to pray for him, and every time I prayed, I don't know what would happen. I would just forget to pray. And so then after that happened a few times, I started praying and forgot to pray. I thought, maybe he's in hell because he was in flames. And then years later, he appeared periodically. And every time he appeared, he was filled with hate for me. See, he had never forgiven me for having affairs with other men, because when I went to Mexico, I had affairs with other men, but I thought he and I were finished. We were finished, but that doesn't matter. I was never in love with him and I was not faithful to him, but that's not cause for murder or hate. But of course, it could be inspiring hate, but certainly it's not a cause for murder, which he tried twice to strangle me. But then he still hated me. And after 30 years while he was in purgatory, I got tired of seeing visions of him still hating me. And I said, that's it, God. Don't show him to me anymore. But I did realize that he was no longer in flames, and very slowly but surely his state improved. Even though he hated me, he was slowly but surely improving. So he was in purgatory, not hell. So I said, that's it, God. Don't show him to me anymore. I'm telling you about hate, how you will pay for your hate in purgatory. 20 more years went by. In fact, 25 years went by, and I didn't know if he was still in purgatory. And at the time, I was very much involved in helping souls in purgatory. So I said, okay, God, I'm willing to see Stanley again. Show him to me. And that very night, God showed him to me. And because of my willingness to see him again that very night, he ascended into heaven. He was healed finally of his hate. And he had served the longest time in purgatory of anyone I had ever ministered to. And I've ministered to many people. And he was in for 55 years. My mother was a monster. She told me so herself. I said, Mom, how would you describe yourself the way you were to me? I'm a channeler. I can read almost anybody's mind, maybe anybody's, but I can. Everybody I have tried to read their mind, I have succeeded. And I asked her, I said, Mom, what were you to me? What were you on earth? She said, I was a monster. I was a monster. She said that. She didn't say just to you. She said, I was a monster. She spent 25 years in purgatory. 25. Errol Flynn, the notorious womanizer, spent 24 years in purgatory. And to show you the difference, Stanley spent 55, my mother 25. So Stanley was more than twice as monstrous as my mom, and my mom was monstrous to me. And to my dad and to other people as well, I realized. Yeah, and to animals. Yeah, she was a monster. You will pay for your unforgiveness in purgatory. Do you understand? You cannot afford to hold on to hate. Some people hate God. They blame God for their sufferings. See, that is how God tests us. If we are true lovers or if we are not true lovers of God. God is all good. How can we hate God and block God with our hate? Because our hate will block God. People blame God. And I learned when I was preaching on the street. It was around 2001, I believe. Yeah, that was the year, the winter. And the day I preached forgiveness, I got more negative reactions from people than anything I had ever preached. People literally yelled at me. One man said, if you don't shut up, he had a cane. He was walking with a cane. If you don't shut up, I'm going to take this cane and hit you with it. And another woman who was, I think, crazy, and I'm not even sure if that was the same day, or a different day. But it was one of the days I was preaching on the street, just to goes to show you how not exactly dangerous but uncomfortable it is to preach on the street. So one woman who sounded like she was insane, she said to me, "You belong in the psych ward. The psych ward is that away. I'm going to push you out on the street and get you run over by a car." That's why people don't preach on the street. That's why they preach in church and wait for the good guys to come into the church where it's safe and they preach to them. But where did Jesus go? Only the synagogue? He went everywhere. He went to find sinners. They said, "Why are you eating and drinking with sinners?" He said, "That's who I came to save. I didn't come to save the righteous. I came to find the sinners. Save the sinners, not the righteous." And of course, the people that were questioning him were the worst sinners of all, the Pharisees. Well, I don't know about the worst, but they were the worst. They were the worst to Jesus, towards Jesus. They harassed him. They nagged him. They try to catch him up. They try to trip him up with questions like, "Should we pay taxes?" Wow, that was a tricky one. They could have nabbed him on that. They could have gone to Pontius Pilate and said, "This man is preaching that we shouldn't pay our taxes," you see. But the Romans were the enemies of the Hebrews. They kept the Hebrews under control and under their jurisdiction and made them pay taxes. So Jesus said, "Give me a coin," and they gave him a coin, and he showed the coin, the front of it, and he said, "Whose head is that?" They said, "Caesar's." He said, "Okay, render Caesar unto Caesar's what is Caesar's, and render unto God what is God's." And it says they never dared question him again after that. I mean, that was a slick way of getting out of it. He always got out of every trip up that they made for him. I mean, the way he handled the adulterous woman is a marvel, an absolute marvel, because had he told them, "No, no, let her go, show mercy, let her go, don't stone her to death," had he just said that, they could have said, "He's telling us to break the law of Moses. He's against, our laws." But he did it in a way that they couldn't accuse him of anything. They all slinked away when he wrote their sins in the sand, and he said, "Whoever is without sin, cast the first stone." And the oldest one took a look and slinked away, dropped his stone and slinked away, and then the next and the next, until they were all gone. He says, "Woman, where are your accusers?" She said, "There are none." And he said, "No one is accusing you, are they?" And she said, "No." And he said, "Neither do I. Go and sin no more." He said that to all the sinners. It doesn't mean he agreed with them about her so-called sin of adultery. It doesn't mean he agreed with it. But everyone he healed, he told them, "Don't sin anymore." He told everyone that. So we don't know if he thought she sinned by the adultery or not, you see. See, I can be pretty slick too. Because I don't believe sex is a sin. Unless God says it is. In some cases, it might be. But just sex by itself is not automatically a sin. Sex outside of marriage, or sex with someone other than your spouse. That's the new religion. All right, so my husband Stanley was in purgatory paying for his hatred of me. Among other things, I don't know what else his other sins were. I just don't. I only saw and perceived his hatred of me. And when I had good luck with finances, he, instead of being joyful, he was very upset and downcast and angry. And that's when I said to God, "That's it. I don't want to see him anymore. I don't want to see him anymore. I'm done with him." Forgive those who hurt you. Do it once a month. Go through everybody that hurt you the most. It'll hurt to even remember. Family members, you've got to forgive them, no matter how hard it is. They betrayed you. They didn't give you fairness, or they said bad things about you, or they beat you up. Who knows? It could be anything. Forgive people who hurt you physically. Forgive people who fired you from a job unfairly. Forgive people who made you lose opportunities. Forgive people who took away love from you, who you had somebody who loved you and they stole them from you. They turned them away from you. They took the love you had from someone. They took it away from you. They either turned them against you or they somehow received them for their own self. That hurts. Whatever way you need to psych yourself up to get yourself out of hate and anger. Oh, and here's one more trick. There's another trick. Sometimes you just can't conjure up the feeling of forgiveness, the feeling of not being upset, the feeling of not being hurt, the feeling of not being angry. Tell God the following: God, I can't get rid of the feeling, but I want to forgive. See, it's your will that is the determining factor. If you put a hit on somebody to have them killed, you can have a change of heart. And if you contact the person you hired to kill someone and you tell them, I have changed my mind, do not go through with this murder. Do not do it. You are then free of the murder. You are free of it because your will has changed and you passed it on to the killer you hired. So I take a note from that. Say to God, I have the will, even though I don't have the feeling. The person who hurt me, I just can't get over the feeling of pain and a feeling of unforgiveness, but I want to forgive. So I ask you, God, to accept it as if I did forgive that person. And God will ratify your will, your desire to forgive, even though you don't have the feeling. God will ratify it. Do this to liberate yourself, to cleanse yourself, to give yourself peace of mind. You need peace of mind. You need to clean your soul to be happy. You cannot be happy when you harbor hate, unforgiveness, anger, resentment, and negative feelings toward anyone. So I hope I've got through to you, and God bless you. I love you. Go in peace to love and serve Jesus and Mary and Buddha and all the saints of all religions. Will speak to you again in the near future. Amen.